Go. Marvelous.
Nice, hallelujah. But guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you showing an interest in this. It's a subject close to mine and Vanessa's heart. Vanessa is I'll let Vanessa introduce herself. But yeah, she's in high demand as an expert in biophilic design, hence why she's sort of on the road and performing ad hoc. But yeah, so my name is Xander. I, with my brother, run a company called Foss Light, and we're a British architectural lighting manufacturer, but our sort of belief and passion goes beyond just about selling product. It's about, our responsibility as designers of artificial products to try and do the very best for human beings in the environment we now call our habitats. And that's sort of the basis of this discussion. That's why we call it the 90% challenge. All will become clear. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I'll leave it to Ness to give an intro on herself as well.
Well, you're mute, Ness.
Are you just on mute, Vanessa? Vanessa, you're just on mute. Okay, I'll tell you what.
To unmute. I've got it.
There we
I've
go.
got
You
it.
got it.
There you
Go,
go.
go.
I've got it. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I'm Vanessa Champion. As you can see, I'm actually currently at the Chelsea Flower Show, and just behind me, you've got the Chelsea Pensioners Hospital, the Chelsea Hospital. But I'm actually right near a dustbin because it's nice and quiet. So apologies. I am on the road. As Xander said, I seem to be everywhere speaking about biophilic design. We launched the Biophilic Design Sourcing Hub yesterday, where we're trying to connect industry with products and all that kind of stuff. So, it's all a bit mental, but I am founder and editor of the Journal of Biophilic Design. We publish and also broadcast thought leadership, case studies on biophilic design, nature-inspired design, bio-based solutions. We also publish research in the journal, and we present it in a way, I suppose, like sort of intelligent guardian or a telegraph reader, depending which side of the fence you sit, but so that people can access it, and they can also take the journal, give it to their client and say, for instance, we need more nature and more bio-based materials and sort of more nature and so biophilia in the built environment, and to give them the education issue. So for us, the whole point of what I'm doing is to try and accelerate the change. It's to trying to make places and spaces better for the physical and mental health of people, as well as the health of our planet. Yeah, the very survival of our planet, I should say, actually. So, yeah.
Well, sorry, you go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it's probably a bit more, but I think that will be sufficient at the minute.
Yeah, but I think, so I obviously, it's a nice rounded conversation because, Vanessa looks at many different aspects. Today, there's a little bit of a focus on light because obviously that's the sort of partnership and alignment. And I write for the Journal of Biophilic Design sometimes. I've also authored a book called The Light Within Us, which is some of the content is contained in this. It's a little bit, if anyone would like to know more about either the journal or the book which I've written, then drop us a line in the chat or drop us an email afterwards. But time to get into it, right? So I've called it the night. This is basically a whole load of pub facts is normally what I talk about. It's a lot of sort of black and white bar charts. And I think where Ness and I have a bit of a crossover is trying to, we sort of said at the beginning, but our first meeting was in a pub, so why not keep that theme? But this is a load of sort of interesting facts. Some are fun, some are pretty bleak. Unfortunately, we start with a bit of a bleak one. We spend 90% of our time indoors now. So that is less than 1 hour outside a day, which is less time outside than maximum security prisoners. So Ty Farrow, who's an amazing guy who both Vanessa and I know, who he surmised this in another quite sort of depressing but fun fact, which is we spend less time coming up for air, i.e. going outside, than blue whales spend at the surface of the water, which is crazy. So we're spending more time indoors than underwater animals spend underwater, which is crazy. So we spend about 79 years of our life indoors. So when you start thinking about our habitat, there's no other argument, right? Our indoor spaces are our primary habitat. But the issue is our habitats and the way that we live has evolved faster than our psyche and our evolution allows us to actually do. So when you look at architects, they spend between 7 and 10 years learning to design the buildings that we now call our habitats. It's about the same time as a doctor. So doctors learn to study the human health of bodies, but architects don't have a single biology module. during the 7 to 10 years of designing the spaces our bodies are ultimately in. So we put more consideration into the zoos we design for animals than we do houses or spaces for human beings. And they should both be equal. It's one of the rare occasions where I guess animals are, considered more than us, which is not a bad thing, but we could also benefit. So that's where we bring into the discussion biophilic design. Biophilic design is, I think, Vanessa, you'll probably agree. You're more at the coalface of this stuff, but I feel it's a massively misunderstood term. During lockdown, in particular, a lot of people would put photo. They'd put a plant in their bathroom and send a photo and go, "Oh, hashtag biophilic design." It's not quite that. There's a whole load of nuanced paths to it. And Vanessa, you're probably better placed to give an explanation on that.
So just, I suppose, really briefly, obviously biophilic is in two halves. So bio meaning life, like biology, and philia meaning love and tendency towards. And it basically, or love, it refers to our innate connection and our innate interdependency on nature, but actually on living systems, on natural systems. And E.O. Wilson spoke about this, and he described it as the urge, we all have an urge, to affiliate with other forms of life. Kellett, who was another proponent of biophilic design, has written loads and loads of books. He unfortunately passed away, as did Wilson. But he spoke about how we evolved in a bio-based environment, and now we're living in a man-made environment. And just like Xander said, we spend 90% of our time in this man-made environment, but our bodies, our biomes, are wired to respond to and flourish in, because that's how we've evolved, to be around nature, to be around trees. And Xander's going to be talking about light brilliantly. And that's why we need to have more access to more natural systems in our built environment, particularly in healthcare and schools, but obviously in our workplaces and homes as well. There's all the economic benefits of biophilic design, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly anyway. But essentially, biophilic design is the design principle which brings the biophilia hypothesis into the built environment as a solution to help us flourish. And help the planet flourish as well, because it just tends to be more natural materials and natural patterns and systems and things that we're bringing in. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what it is.
It was a good nutshell, a great nutshell. So I think one of the parts of this is the sort of application of biophilic principles. So Bill Browning and Catherine O'Ryan, in conjunction with Google, actually, there's a guy called Joe Clancy as well, who was their sort of research assistant, who was heavily involved in trying to come up with a number of scientifically proven methods of design that can enhance the performance of human beings in the built environment. So it was suggested that performance was made up of someone's ability, their motivation, or their opportunity. That was the metric of, if you improve someone's ability, improve someone's motivation or someone's opportunity, by dint of the fact that one of those goes up, their performance increases. So that was the sort of goal that Google set the Terrapin team. And they said, look, we'd like to create offices that make our employees more able, more motivated, or have more of an opportunity. And you start thinking about the Google offices, you've got a slide going from floor 1 to ground floor. You've got whiteboards on every single wall. So there's an opportunity to write those ideas. And what it does really is just create this sort of fluid flow state environment whereby your body is feeling so calm, inspired, hormonally balanced, and excited and calm, and all these amazing mechanisms, that you're a better version of yourself. And what's interesting is ultimately it is just about replicating nature. It's not rocket science, and there are 15 proven patterns of biophilic design now, which I've got on the screen here. We can run through them in more detail, but ultimately there are 3 sections. You've got nature in the space. Nothing is better than nature. If you're designing a building, start with the things that actually make up the world around us, the biomes around us, the biology. Number 2, natural analogs. If you're putting artificial things into a built environment, replicate nature, because that's all we like to see. And that's very much, where aging and mimicking shapes in nature and finishes and stuff like that, which we'll get onto. And the final one is nature of the space. That's the architecture. Are you going to raise a ceiling up to create an airy or inspiring structure that makes you feel like you can breathe? or are you going to drop a ceiling to create refuge and protection and give you those calm recovery moments? Are you going to curve a corridor, which gives you a little bit of intrigue? You know, we're intrepid explorers, so a little endorphin boost will actually improve your motivation. So it's all these brilliantly researched and factually proven ways of replicating nature that improve human beings' performance, and it benefits every single sector. So we'll start in the top left, which is an office space. So just by tilting a desk to look out of a window, instead of looking into a strange white contained box, the brain relaxes. It's no longer trying to work out what these walls are and the flat textures and the brilliant white walls, which is one of the only colors not found in nature that we've decided to lick on every single wall that we live in. It's crazy. By turning a desk to look out of a window, the eyes relax, the familiarity comes into the brain, the data being harvested by the brain to work out what this weird box is disappears and becomes available to improve creativity. It also means you've got more. Yeah. So anyway, they did a study in Sacramento, in California, and they worked out that you can actually the processing potential of an individual employee was about $1,000 per day. When they then tilted the desk to look out of the window, the productivity of each employee went to $3,000 per day just by giving them a view to nature. And that also applies with pools of light, textured walls, organic colors, and again, all these 15 patterns. The top right is hospitality. We pay more for a room with a view. In Seattle, it's something about 191% higher charge for a view to a lake. Hotel lobbies that have biophilic patterns, such as these 15, are used 36% more, which means that you're able to sell more Negronis and olives and, you know, club sandwiches. McDonald's do the complete opposite. You go in, horrible colors, well, not necessarily to different people, but bright, you know, artificial colors, bright lights. You go in and they want you to get out as quickly as possible. I don't know whether this is true, but it's quite a fun fact. Subway, the sandwich restaurant, I don't know if you can call them a restaurant, the sandwich chain, they have a yellow wavelength that gets pumped into the environment. And like I say, I'm not 100% sure on this, but it's just quite fun. Yellow wavelength supposedly is pumped into the space to make you hungry. And then when you've eaten, that yellow wavelength starts to make you feel quite nauseous. So you leave the building so that more customers can come in. So which I think is quite fun. The bottom right, which we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail, this is the wonderful Maggie's Hospice Centre. This is, we're talking about healthcare here. So just by showing an image of nature to someone undergoing gallbladder surgery. So if every doctor and every nurse had a clipboard with a photo of a pine forest on it and showed it to someone undergoing gallbladder surgery, that increases recovery times by 24 hours. Patients recover 24 hours faster. So that would save the NHS around £100 million a year. We know that sick bodies heal slower. Nurses and doctors make more mistakes if they're stressed. So putting the body in an environment where they're calm allows them to recover quicker. Mortality rates in heart surgery drops between 12 and 15% when you have natural conditions. Yeah. Retail.
Just going to add to that actually, and also sound is one of the patterns as well of biophilic design. And if you think about most noisy environments, particularly in A&E or in respiratory wards, and it raises our cortisol levels, because if you think about it, years ago when we were living lives on the plains, because that's what this is all about, it's about our physicality is exactly the same. And if it was a loud noise, it was very loud, our cortisol levels rise, we think something's going to eat us, or and so we run, and when fight or flight goes, and obviously it's not, it's just like Joe and Fred talking about their holiday, or slamming the photocopier or whatever it is. But that's why we need better acoustics in these spaces. So that's why biophilic design also encourages this improvement of more nature sounds, if you want. Although where I am now, you can hear a police van, but that's cue police van. But yeah, so we need more kind of diffusion of sound as well in the built environment for our physical health. Sorry,
this is the reason I love it so. No, not at all. I mean, this is I'm very much light and neuro processing, but more to the visual side of stuff. We'll get onto that later. But this is what I love is hearing these other sides. And for me, it's a formula for engaging the senses in a way that makes you happier and live longer in every aspect. It's literally like a handbook for happiness. It's awesome. Got straight out of Disney, that quote. Retail, shop windows with biophilic window displays increases footfall by roughly 20%, which means that there's more people likely to then go into the store, and then you've got happy employees who can then go, welcome, we're really happy to have you here, instead of being really frustrated by being in some horrible, flat, brilliant white space. And then residential, which is where we call our nest. That's what we call our nest. So, why not make the ultimate recovery camp, your betterment base camp, organic and nourishing, as opposed to sort of battling. So one of the things which I sort of the book which I wrote was, for me, trying to tap into a part that I felt was most appealing, really, in terms of this human connection to why it works. Because I didn't really, if we understand where we came from and why this makes sense, then doing it is second nature. So this missing part in my mind, probably it's out there, but just it was my own research project, and I just compiled it into a series of pub facts. So in kind of Star Wars fashion, I guess, we go all the way back to the Big Bang. There was a huge explosion. I wasn't there, but they called it big. Radiation then rippled all the way through the universe and eventually landed on planet Earth. And this is going to be, like I say, biased towards the evolution of light, but that's, where my focus is. And I know Ness will be able to add other layers that I'll also be learning through this podcast, this webinar. So light that eventually landed on planet Earth, and the first life on Earth developed. The tiny blue-green algae that lived at the base of the ocean, called cyanobacteria. And they started creating oxygen. And the oxygen was released, started reducing the amount of carbon dioxide, and basically oxygen is far more potent than CO2, so it gave a real stepping stone for evolution to kick on, and all the amazing, wonderful and wacky creatures that we have around the world today. And one of the very first things we did was try and connect to the rising and the setting of the sun. So this is the evolution of the human eye. Top left is a retina, just a basic light sensing pad. Things like krill, plankton, and shrimp, they have this they have this mechanism. So when the sun rises up, light lands on that pad, and a particular blue wavelength says it's daytime. Creates cortisol, which increases the blood pressure and the heart rate, and they go, right, it's time to go and survive and to mate and to hunt and to feed. And they drop down into the ocean, and then the sun tracks and then eventually sets. And suddenly that light stops landing on their eye, and the cortisol is reduced, and they start going into sort of rest and repair mode, and they float to the top of the sea, which is also a protection mechanism. So all life then started to learn to navigate. So this retina turned into a sort of concave shape, so we could see which direction light was coming from, which allowed us to grow fins, tails, flippers, and start exploring. But because life was all underwater, there's lots of debris in the water, leaves, fish scales, all that kind of stuff. So if a fish scale lands in your eye and sits there, you're blind, which isn't a great evolutionary advantage. So it slowly started closing off that front part of the eye and created a lens. And the lens allowed creatures to start focusing light on the back of the eye. So you can kind of see how we evolved to that moment. And then these creatures here, who I always think look really mischievous, that image in particular. So they could start seeing out of water onto land, and it was like an all-you-can-eat buffet. There's loads of vegetation, and they kind of came out of the sea onto land, and their flexible cartilage, which was nice and supple, suddenly wasn't being held up by water. So all this gravity from outside of the sea was suddenly pressurizing this cartilage and compacting it, and it started to calcify, turning to bone. And then the gills started turning to lungs. The head tipped back to create more room for the lungs. And then we started standing upright. We're basically all related to this fish. So, but what I find interesting about this is because your tears are exactly the same saltiness as seawater, because we had to bring that hydration method from water onto land as we started to populate. So I was thinking it's a nice physical reminder of just how long we've been outside. Every time that you're watching a rom-com and you well up, Jennifer Aniston and someone else having a sort of Jason Segel having an emotional moment, those tears are a direct reminder whilst you're watching Netflix of the fact that we really should be, thinking about being close to the sea and outdoors and in the rain and all that. But we also often look at, beetles and bugs and think perhaps they're quite simple. They've got these funny little antennae, but that is what our eyes are. Our eyes are extensions of our brains. They've budded out huge amounts of energy to latch on to radiation. So this is all the radiation from the Big Bang. So you've got radio waves, which are sort of slow, cumbersome things that help Justin Bieber travel around the world. Then you've got microwaves, which they vibrate the same frequency as water, which is why it heats up food. Infrared, which we physically experience as heat. And then right next to the wavelength that we experience as heat is the color red. So you then go to orange, yellow, green, indigo, blue, and violet. And just beyond violet is ultraviolet, which strips paintings and gives us skin cancer. So one of the most sort of impactful things for me was learning that the one sec, sorry, it's gonna pop up. It's learning that color is radiation, and when this radiation lands our eyes, it has different physiological and psychological effects. So this is not a hard and fast science, but it's something which really fascinates me. Color psychology is, some of it is factual. So the color red increases your blood pressure and heart rate. The color blue calms it down. Color green flicks between the two. It depends what hue and particular tone. If it's an artificial one, then that would actually stress you out. There's also a whole load of research into the quantity of different colors, etc. So it's about harmonizing, just like outside. But also breed, color, gender, hemisphere, and memory is a huge one. You know, we do a podcast. I know Vanessa does a really brilliant podcast. We've just started when we were speaking to a color psychologist, and she was saying that there was a woman who's an interior designer who never designed red into any of her even clients' houses because she was in a car crash with a red car. But there's all these things which will affect the emotional reactions that we have in spaces. But brands have used this forever and a day. They know, you know, casinos are a great example, using blue to calm us, but red to excite, and then green to keep us in the middle, but kind of grounded. So McDonald's, the Golden Arches, they used to be a lot more electric and vibrant reds and yellows. It used to be, you know, literally, as I say, electric red and electric blue. And that was really attractive to children. And you had Ronald McDonald kind of juggling Happy Meals. And suddenly the parents sort of said, this is all a bit much, really. Do you mind calming it down a bit, guys? And they went, oh, no, we're not bad guys. And then all they did was just remove that electricity from their logo, softened it, turned it more into a beigey orange and a softer, warmer red, and invented the McCafe. And suddenly they're a restaurant, you know, kind of that. So the power of wavelengths to change our perception of brands is huge. And in the UK, we've got a supermarket called Sainsbury's, which used to be orange and white, and they rebranded to orange and purple, which is a regal royal color that comes with connotations of respect and trust and stuff. And that actually created, more respect. It became a more luxury brand. The one at the top left is also a bit of fun. There's been studies on this, but just, why not? There was a study which has been widely disputed now, but just to give you an idea of how long we've known that color affects us and how much people use this to their advantage. So Baker Miller Pink was suggested to make people up to 35% physically weaker for half an hour. So Norwich City Football Club actually painted their away changing rooms in this color, because in a competitive world of sport, everything gives you an edge. So if your opponents are sat in a room that fundamentally they were told makes them weaker, why not? So I think it's now banned in sports, but it's why a lot of goalkeepers will have, you know, electric blue or electric yellow or electric red to try and stun the striker as they're approaching. So we know that color and radiation has effects on us. But there's an amazing book called The Eyes of the Skin by Juhani Pallasmaa, which suggests that as technology has evolved, the world is flattening. You know, we used to draw all the spaces that we designed. You'd hear the pencil gliding on the paper. You'd feel the vibration of it in your hand. You'd smell the paper. And all of that sensory process when designing that space translated directly into the end space. But now that we quickly use auto SketchUp or CAD, and it's, oh, I need to get a table. Right, go to inventory, click, that'll do, download, action. You know, we're so disconnected with the process of the materials and textures and everything of the space that there's a direct correlation they draw between the number of polished, white and mirrored buildings that we live in today. Quite simply, we are removing the complexity that we evolved to see for so long. And that's damaging us in more ways than ever. One of the biggest things is light. So sunlight is this beautiful full fat HD radiation that we've evolved to see. And with the advent of the LED, suddenly we moved away from this brilliant style of lighting of halogen. Halogen was fantastic. It acted like a mini sun. It was a heated filament with a noble gas that, kind of chucked out infrared and near infrared, all of these wavelengths that allowed us to do all kinds of amazing things. I mean, infrared actually charges in your body. If you go outside in the morning, infrared, when it lands on your skin, acts as like a giant battery pack charger that charges every mitochondrial cell in your skin. It also stops myopia or short-sightedness. So we have the highest rate of short-sightedness at the moment because we're in these artificial spaces with no infrared, and it's meaning that just like a plant growing towards a light in a dark room, our eyes become oblong and unbalanced. So by switching from halogen to LED, we immediately ripped out all the infrared and the red, and fundamentally ended up working with the blue. So an LED is a blue crystal, a semiconductor, essentially. And when you put current through it, it emits a high frequency blue wavelength. That blue wavelength then passes through a sort of, it's called a phosphor, which is like a mix. It's like baking a cake of different compounds that stretches that blue wavelength a little bit more to try and get you all of the sort of luxurious full fat HD sunlight. But most of them are crap. Sorry to sort of use that word, but they are. I always use the example of, would you light a room with an iPhone torch? Probably not. So if you go and put a £5 fitting into a space, obviously it's horses and courses, but what tends to happen is lighting gets so unconsidered throughout the design process that at the end of the project, they look at every room and go, we can make a saving here, and it will end up going from a decent product with lots of orange and red and low blue and all that kind of stuff, and immediately you get your iPhone torch in the ceiling. And the damage it does is significant, because ultimately we're talking about the emotional impact and physiological impact of wavelengths and radiation bouncing around into our eyes that have budded out, even more so becoming short-sighted because they're desperate to reach out like a plant to light in a dark room, to latch onto this radiation, and we strip it all out. And most importantly, the color red is actually the one that we first learned to see. Our first 8 weeks of life, babies in their first 8 weeks see in black and white, and the first color they see is red. That's to learn blood flow, communication. But red is also the color which makes leather and brick and wood and all these lovely, warm, nourishing natural colors come to life. But now we're in a space where that just doesn't happen. So you get that image on the left as opposed to the right. So if you do a really lovely project, done all the mood boards, done all the sort of layouts and spatial design, and then you put an iPhone torch in it, that's the kind of difference. What's interesting, sorry, Vanessa, I know I'm very much sort of natting away, to please dive into this. Okay. So we evolved with the rising and the setting of the sun. So when the sun rises, a blue wavelength landed on our eye and went, cortisol, go, go, go. This is not a drill. It's daytime. You need to hunt, gather, etc. But the blue wavelength that we evolved to get stressed or calmed by is the same blue wavelength that now makes up the lighting that we put in our habitats. And a dose of a bright LED has been found to increase alertness as much as a double espresso. So light in the right quantity has been suggested to create the same amount of cortisol in your body as a double espresso. So last thing at night, when you're trying to wind down and you're being slapped in the eyes by Starbucks, it's not going to be conducive to rest. And one of the examples I use of just how far in the wrong direction we have gone with regards to considering what the human body needs and what our habitat should be is a modern NHS hospital. So you've got bright blue lights, no contrast, as Vanessa said as well, no sort of non-rhythmic sensory stimuli, no sort of irregular sounds, no sort of natural senses or smells, anything like that. And as a result, the World Health Organization has actually declared working at night in a modern hospital as probably cancerous. So the places where we go and send human beings are most vulnerable to recover is blasting out caffeinated lights. You've got no contrast, you've got no texture, you've got no, it's, for me, obviously, this is again the part that I can offer to this webinar that Vanessa can sort of round off is lights, where you put it up against a wall compared to the middle of a corridor, the wavelength you're putting in. We'll get onto it later, but glare and flicker and all these things that I'm on a journey of discovery on this, right? And every week I find out a new fact where I go, really? What the hell are we doing? But the positive, this whole thing is a positive thing because we have a brilliant framework, we have brilliant research, we have really like exciting opportunities as designers now to create spaces that really nurture and nourish. And perfect example of this is Maggie's hospice. This image that we showed at the beginning. So Maggie was terminal. Well, she had a terminal illness. Was in an NHS environment and was really upset by her friends and family. Not only seeing her stressed in this stressful environment, but also her seeing them stressed. And she said, "I'm not doing this," and ended up basically finding her own relaxing place. And in her will, left it, and it's evolved into a flagship biophilic HQ, really, and there are 3 of them, I think, in the UK, and they're absolutely incredible. You've got an environment that has natural curves, edges, sounds, moving sunlight. You've got beautiful fractal patterns and textures and materials. And people, I'm not 100% sure. Do people live longer than expected there, Vanessa?
Yeah, so they do.
But...
So it's actually, if you compare like the picture you saw before and with this one, which I think is a brilliant juxtaposition, but I actually interviewed Dame Laura Lee, who was one of the founders and worked with Laura to create these spaces. And one of the things she says, if you're going through chemo, for instance, you are like super sensitive to metal. And if you think about most door handles, particularly if you're going to the NHS or whatever, they're all metal because, it's all, bugs and all this kind of thing that they're trying to get rid of. But actually wood has a natural antibacterial property, but you don't have to obviously you need to use them in certain places, but in many places you don't, it's just about where you specify these areas. So for the Maggie's Cancer Care Centres, the door handles, obviously, because these people are going through cancer, these are cancer sort of not recovery places, but it's if someone has been diagnosed with cancer, they can come here with their family. They are held by the building. It's a space where it's safe, it's welcoming, as you say, the materials, the textures, but when they're touching the doorknobs, it's a different experience. And as Xander was talking about, really, and light is obviously one of the senses, but obviously it has such a knock-on effect on so many physical effects on us. But all the other sensories, so biophilic design is actually about that reconnection, that reawakening of us understanding that sound and textures and materials and smells as well. So if you think about, how your best nature day, or if you just think about, where you went on holiday, and if you just close your eyes, you might be on the beach, so you can feel the sand between your toes, you can hear the water, the lapping on the beach, you can hear a seagull, you can put your feet and your hands into the sand to feel the warmth of the sand on you. So these sensory elements, which are so important to us, they're inherent to us, and our bodies, as Xander was saying about our eyes, it's happening on all our other senses as well, where we're seeking out these responses all the time, and we've removed ourselves from that. And as Xander was saying, and if you look at the NHS picture beforehand, it's all blue, it's all white, the flooring itself is just unnatural, and there's nothing there that says harmony, anything that our body understands. So even if they, you can put the flooring, you can use the flooring in that first one, for instance, even instead of using white vinyl, you can use a mock wood grain vinyl. You can put images of nature on. So in answer to your question, Xander, really, people have a longer life expectancy when they're more when they're surrounded by nature, by natural patterns and natural systems. And particularly at the Maggie Centre, there is the more positive outcomes. And one of the things that they do as well, if you think about when you go to most NHS or your doctors, you have a straight pathway, and it's a direct, you're going out of your car, which is usually in an awful place most of the time, and it costs you a fortune. But you park your car, you walk directly straight into these awful doors that slide open, that's so mechanical. But really, what they say is that when you put your hand on a door, it's your first, I suppose, approach to asking for help. So having these welcoming arms, if you want. So how you shape your doors if you've got a workplace, rather than having something mechanical, what can you do at your, as you open the space so people can come in? So it's all thinking things like that. So anyway, I see, Xander, you've got some other slides to share.
Sorry, I was making notes of the cool stuff you were saying. School's in session. So yeah, I mean, again, another brilliant example. This is a Google office on the left, and this is every other office on the right. So you can see the applied 15 principles roughly. We'll get on to a couple of other of them, just for reference. If you look at the sort of shapes in the tree, I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor here, but in the tree canopies on the left, you can see there are sort of laser cut shapes, and they look very specific. Then you've got fractal patterns. We'll get onto that in a moment as well on the floor. And yeah, you can hopefully see that there's the consideration about variation and calm and energy and everything. Whereas on the right, it's just one sort of constant blasting experience. There's no nuance. There's no life to it, really. And that's obviously not going to be particularly helpful. A big thing as well is nothing in nature is stagnant. Everything ages. Unfortunately, we do as well. But, wood, stone, metal, even, it has depth as it comes to life. And trying to mimic the natural finishes in nature, in the built environment, has a real positive effect on it. And the other thing is sort of the way in which you're adding complexity to the environment. They've done amazing studies where if you look at someone's brain when looking at a sort of plain, simple object, the visual cortex doesn't actually light up too much. The neurons only fire a little bit. When they look at something more complicated with lovely texture, that more visual processing is required. So more neurons are firing in the brain, which objectively is more pleasure. So the more that, light is also a fantastic tool for this. We look at RCPs, like reflective ceiling plans, bird's eye views, and there'll be an amazing kitchen with an island in the middle and symmetry of 1, 2, 3, 4 lights around that kitchen island, lighting the floor. So it's a perfect lit floor, but we're all vertical creatures. We look at the walls around us. If you move those lights just up against the wall to graze that beautiful textured finish that you got, that is not only going to make that vertical surface light up, which makes it feel area and spacier because everything's reaching out due to the fact that you're highlighting the width of the room, but you're stimulating more visual processing. Those neurons are firing, looking at that texture, and it's like a little brain massage. Where you put the light, the angle of it, the right wavelength, the right time, the right place, is the difference between. So it's the secret sauce, in my opinion, for every sort of space that you walk into and go, wow, I don't know what it is here, but something is really, really right. And fractals. So fractals are the building blocks of the world. So everything, if you look at, I would quite like the example of the tree, which is in the background here. If you think about a tree, the trunk always seems mathematically proportionate to the branches coming off it. And the branches coming off that branch always seems to just sort of slowly get smaller down to the leaf. And then even the spine of the leaf, right down to the cells, they all look like they're sort of, I don't know, organized, and they are. The fractals are the mathematical patterns found in nature that go from everything from the crystals in a snowflake right up to the rings of Saturn. And when you replicate the natural patterns that nature has in the built environment, again, it's familiar because we've seen it forever. from the moment that, we brought sea onto land using our eyes and our tear ducts. We've been looking at nature, these familiar patterns and shapes. So one of the things as well is Bill Browning and Catherine O'Ryan, when they were doing their study, Bill Browning was doing a study Walmart asked him to design their flagship store. And the Walmart logo is a sun. So he thought, wouldn't it be nice if I bounce sunlight into the space? So they created a little silver funnel that was going to bounce the sunlight into the store and make it a lovely space. Budget ran out, as it always does. So only half that store ended up being illuminated. And that store ended up having something like 30, that side of the store with the sunlight in it ended up having about 30% more sales and and customers and employees spent about 60% more time. So he thought, wow, there's something in this. And this is the sort of magic for me about obviously full fat natural sunlight. There's nothing better than it. But just how much energy we've used to evolve a connection with sunlight, the rising and the setting of the sun, the emotional and physiological responses that we have to light in the built environment, and talking about where we put light in the space. Are we highlighting the texture to massage the pleasure, the fun that we're having in an environment? And this space is, for me, a really, really good example of it. So this is a project we did in the Philippines, and it's basically a shed. But because we've put light right underneath the bar, we didn't, a lighting designer did, put it right underneath the bar, washed out all the textures of those bottles, orange light in the evening, so we're not getting any blue to charge us up. I found a really fun fact that we tell more secrets over candlelight. So when we see an orange light in the evening, particularly with that movement and stuff, we feel, why do you walk into a whiskey bar and just want to stay there? Because it's calm and it's soothing and it's a place where you really feel like you're getting like the plankton rising up to the top of the sea and turning off as the light stops charging them. It's that same nourishing, calming environment. What tends to happen in spaces like this is lighting is an afterthought, and you get one giant pendant that blasts blue light in every direction, and you're in a shed again. And people go, no thanks. So you can literally get people to spend more over red light. You're more susceptible to eating sweets, and your appetite is bigger. So you can get people, if you're a hotelier or a restaurateur, you can get people to spend more money with you and leave a better Google review. How's that for a bit of fun? So the other thing as well is there's an amazing new field of research by an extremely badass woman called Cleo Valentine, who Nessa and I both know, called neuroimmunology. There's a new technology available which allows us to see fundamental parts of the brain that I think it's proteins or something that are released in the brain when you look at something that's stressful or have something stressful going on around you. And that thing that is released is directly associated with damaging your immune system. So put simply, we can now measure how our environments damage our health. And one of the most influential things on that is glare and flicker. So glare is rife absolutely everywhere. It's exactly the same as what I'm saying when you have 4 lights around a kitchen island and you're stood in that kitchen and you've got a floor that's really well lit and all your walls are pitch black. And then you've got, light dancing around in your eyes and causing you headaches. We can now see that damages the immune system. So if you bring those lights up against the wall, you're actually going to be hiding, being able to see into that source, but also you're massaging the texture and getting, so where you put the light is how is like I say, the secret sauce. But flicker is a really big one for me. So I'm sure we've all taken our phones out and gone onto video mode somewhere, either trying to record a TV or a general public environment or an office, and your phone, you're looking at it and the phone is flashing. You can see that the lights in your phone screen seem to be flickering. LEDs don't dim. They achieve dimming by turning on and off very quickly, which means that less light overall is being released. So it appears like there's less light, so it's dimmer. But the reality is that most dimming switches or dimming controls, mains dimming in particular, in essence, the signal going to the light is not of a high enough quality, which means the light goes, I don't know what you want from me, and just starts flickering. Your brain is really good at removing that flicker because it doesn't want to have a horrible experience of like the space that you're in. but it is still happening. And your phone, when you pick that phone up and record the room, that is actually what is going on. But your brain is working overtime, burning all of its energy to create a soothing environment for you. But that flicker in context used to be used as a torture technique by the CIA. And we now have that in pretty much every space that we live, which is crazy. Like I said, they're not all fun facts. So one of the things which I think is quite poignant is, contrast really is where the magic happens with light. So if we think about going to the theatre, single spotlight on an actor or actress on stage makes your hair stand on end. It's that wow factor that really creates the drama. But we're in environments now, I can't remember whether I kept this slide in, but so regulations tend to be misunderstood. So CIBSE say, we got our guideline is, well, people have different objectives, but often what happens is they go, oh, we need 500 lux on a table. And that's in concept, that's a measure of brightness on a surface or something. So they go, oh, it says we need 500 lux on this table. And for context, that's 2.5 times the brightness of a gymnasium. And what the regulation actually means is that on a desk which you're working at, you need to have the ability to have 500 lux. So a table lamp, click, and then you've got a bright working area for you to do your drawing or whatever. What tends to happen is they go, this is not a drill, guys. We need 500 lux everywhere. And then spaces get blasted with 2.5 times the brightness of gymnasium, of normal light. It's 2.5 times the brightness of a gymnasium. And there's no contrast, there's no texture, there's no shadows. It's an NHS hospital, right? It's just too much. There's too much radiation, no interesting stuff going on. And it just, for me, contrast is when the magic happens. And in commercial spaces, it's misunderstood that you can actually have contrast if you push back on the regulations and really look into it. There's another very cool thing, which is biomorphism. So we've had quite a lot of success with our products. The whole thing for us is we're looking at all the stuff we're talking about, the patina of time, patina, I don't know how to say it. But then also natural finishes, natural shapes, which are fractals and soothing to us, but also looking at biomimicry, i.e. mimicking nature. We've had performance increases in some of our products. So this image on the left was based on a particular type of coral that lived next to volcanoes underwater, or a species of some sort. And the shape of it had evolved to get rid of heat extremely quickly. So we chucked it on a product, and we've had about 15% increase in output and all this kind of stuff. So looking to nature can improve the mechanisms of your design. And our downlights are all focused around an eyeball. They're called the Iconics because they're basically, we've got a patented system that means you've got 360-degree rotation. And we've had performance increase, cost savings, and aesthetic benefit. So it's a win-win-win, in my opinion. The other thing is remembering that light changes throughout the day. So if you can get special tunable white chips, that's great. If not, just being aware that you don't want to see blue light from above by the time it's sunset has happened outside. So just turn on an orange table or floor lamp, and that gives you the contrast. And as I know, this building, this is the Royal College of Physicians, which is the highest well-rated building. I think it's about 108 out of 110 or something. And we lit this space. We were sort of quite extensively investigated about our authenticity behind creating biophilic products. I know our products are on your biophilic sourcing hub, Vanessa, as well. But it's an amazing space.
It's beautiful. I was speaking up there actually at the Healthy Cities conference, and I got to experience it first. And I've actually done an interview with the guy who designed it, who was from the biophilic thing. His guy is called Stephen Edge. I do encourage people to check it out on the podcast, General Biophilic Design podcast.
Really
but he's obviously retired, sort of an older person now, if you know what I mean. But he has got so much experience, and what he was explaining that, as you can see there's the whole building is built like a spine. It's called the spine. The skin outside the windows has this like diffuse. So there's like patterns, like you were showing the skin of a reptile, if you want. But that's kind of like creeping up over the front of the building. So when you're inside the building, you get this fractal patterns, if you want, actually on the floor. There's loads of planting, loads of indoor planting. As you say, the light is amazing. yeah, it's just a really healthy space. And because there's less VOCs in there as well, because we're using more bio-based materials, because it's biophilic, and that's what we're encouraging to specify, it's just a better experience. And they've got, because beforehand they used to use like actors for training because it's a college, for actually training their next sort of tranche of physicians. They're now bringing real patients in, and the actual response is so much more positive, and so and people are learning faster and all that kind of thing. So it's just it's just a biophilic design is just an amazing thing. And just to talk about tables and plants and stuff, I'm just going to say this. When we it's the Journal of Biophilic Design. I see somebody's just asked what was the title of the podcast. So journalofbiophilicdesign.com, and you can find it on Spotify and iTunes and all those kind of things. I forgot what I was going to say now. See, I've gone off on a tangent. See, my brain is like a piece of biophilia. Tables. What was I talking about tables for? Can't remember. Oh yeah, tables and plants. That's it. So when you put in your plants, where people say, "Oh, you mustn't put plants by the back wall." You've got to put the plants by the window for the natural light, otherwise they die. But if you just think about that for a moment, where do we then put the staff? We put them against the back wall where they can't see any natural light. And as Xander was saying, we stick a blue light on them and go, right, flourish, earn me loads of money. And we forget that in a business, healthcare, whatever it is, you're going to have more productivity. Your staff is your biggest asset, is your biggest outgoing as well. So if you can make them flourish and be more creative, then it's got to be a win-win. So if you put proper light in and actually orientate the desk so that they can see natural light even better and views of nature. But if you can't do that, for goodness sake, please definitely make sure you use tunable circadian rhythm lighting so you don't go home and kick the dog and shout at the wife or the husband as well. So but Xander, thanks so much. I wanted to say thank you because that's brilliant what you put together there. You speak about light so brilliantly well. Obviously you're living and breathing it, and I was really inspired too. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I second that. It's been a fabulous webinar. I've never made so many notes, and there's so much more I could say and bring into it. But incredible, really. Especially all the pub facts to start with, and then sort of the gems in terms of what was the one that I wrote down. I love the fact that you can people tell more secrets over candlelight. But ultimately, and I feel a bit embarrassed. I said to you right at the start, we haven't really covered this topic before, and which is a massive disservice to you guys and the need for proper lighting and biophilic design. So, not only is it a huge business opportunity because everyone's doing it wrong, but people just don't know about it. And I think this webinar has gone a long way to forming a small audience at this moment in time, but obviously we want to share it. And the work you're doing is pretty amazing, and it should be very inspiring. Sorry, Vanessa.
And I was just going to say as well, there's also, if there's people here who are business owners or they're facility managers or they're involved in specifying, and you've got to tick boxes like your well-being standard, your BREEAM, your biodiversity net gains, your ESG. I mean, really, you need to be having biophilic design because it helps you hit those targets and more. It will help us mitigate climate change. It's already doing that, but it's helping reverse climate change. It's creating regenerative design as well in urban environments. It's like super exciting. It's like this is just one little element. It's like massive load of stuff.
I was going to jump in as well because I know obviously we're off at 1 o'clock. I was just going to quickly show this. So on the FOSS website, which is, we can send this out afterwards, we have, if you're interested in this research, would like to see our podcast being released, we have a whole load where this came from. So we have a login portal where you can look at the book, learning modules, sort of book a CPD. We've got podcasts, something coming soon. The next page as well is going to be a QR code where you can scan to sign up to the Journal of Biophilic Design. So this is basically what you can do. So, and then if anyone would like to sign up to the journal, which I highly recommend, there is a QR code which you can scan here. And we'll obviously send that out afterwards. I just wanted to get that in just before in case, because I know obviously it's a big conversation, but there is a lot more content. And if anyone would like to further discuss, we'd be delighted.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic.
Sorry for interrupting you there.
Thanks so much.
We can share all those links when we post the recording. Yeah, no, fabulous guys. Really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, especially Vanessa having to do it from next to a rubbish bin in a
Well
church
played.
yard.
Honestly,
So
that was you
Xander,
handled that.
yeah, absolutely, and
Handled
Xander,
that
yeah,
so well.
fantastic. So yeah, thanks for attending. Thanks for taking your time. Everyone on the call, really appreciate your positivity and engagement. As you know, some of you, well, many of you know, we are hosting a town hall in June because we are looking to improve meshwork. So we'll be sending out surveys and polls, etc., and invites for DMs and to attend the town hall. So it'd be great to get your input on that. So look out for those notes. But yeah, once again, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And when I post this on Meshwork, please share it because everyone needs to see this. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Cheers.